It is a revolutionary mobile nuclear missile system. A bipedal tank. This technology will be the missing link between infantry and artillery. A kind of Metal Gear, if you will.
Metal Gear?
Number 1. Good transformations versus bad transformations. What is a bad transformation? A bad transformation is a transformation that either adds nothing to the game or something that you forget you even have. Usually because it adds nothing to the game. The last thing you ever want to think about a game mechanic is, oh, right, I forgot I could do that. Bad transformations also tend to blend poorly into gameplay, being awkward to control or obviously tacked on. A clear sign of a transformation that has no reason to exist is when you use it to solve one very specific problem and then turn right back into your normal player character, ostensibly making it nothing but an overly detailed key to a door that could just as easily be removed entirely without changing anything. Contrast this with what makes a good transformation. A good transformation doesn't sacrifice flow or gameplay, rather it enhances it by building upon it. An example of a good transformation would be the dragon form from Dark Souls 1. This new form doesn't make the player overpowered, nor does it allow them to bypass parts of the game. Rather, the dragon form gives the player new tools to combat the same problems without taking away any of the old abilities. Another example of transformations done right would be Super Mario Galaxy. Here, whole levels are built around the unique properties of each new form, necessitating the skillful use of each to complete stages rather than simply treating them as fancy keys. The difference is night and day. Bad transformations are just plain distracting, while good transformations blend seamlessly into gameplay. But perhaps it's time to get into more specific stuff. Number 2. Kirby's Epic Yarn vs. Drawn to Life, the next chapter. Sadly, there's no shortage of games with lousy transformation mechanics, but one game in particular comes to mind. Drawn to Life, the next chapter. The reason I picked Next Chapter over any of the other games is because it has some of the most egregious transformations I've ever seen. First of all, they just come out of nowhere. No fanfare, no story reason. You just unlock them apropos of nothing. But whatever, that's fine. Disappointing, but fine, as long as they're fun to use or creative with their implementation, which neither are. The player in Next Chapter has the ability to switch between two different forms, both of which only exist to solve very specific problems before being tossed right in the garbage. They're so bad it's not even a stretch to call them an afterthought, as most of the game focuses around the player's basic form. And while you can transform at any time, just look how awkward it is to use these powers outside of where they're meant to be, not to mention how useless. And even when used in their proper place, their purpose is so specific it becomes self-defeating. I mean, like, take a look at this segment. I can turn into a blob and squeeze through these gaps to get down, or I could just as easily drop straight down and end up in the exact same place. What's even the point of taking the time to go through this segment of squeezing through all these crevices when you could have just had a staircase or something? If I'm not avoiding any obstacles or solving any puzzles, I'm basically just walking down. Or this stage. So you start out and you have to turn to the spider immediately to climb up the walls so that you can eventually get to a straightaway where you turn right back into your normal form. So what's the point? Why not just start the level right here? See, the biggest issues with the transformations in Next Chapter are that they don't add anything at all to the game in any way. In fact, there are so many levels where you have no use for any of your transformation abilities at all. You may even find yourself coming into a segment where you're supposed to transform and then go, oh right, I forgot I could even do that. I mean, if everything your special power does can be taken out of the game without changing anything, then there's really no reason at all to have it in the first place. It's just going to show that the contrast between Drawn to Life the Next Chapter is heavy with Kirby's Epic Yarn. I mean, for starters, Epic Yarn's transformations are dedicated segments, and they happen frequently. Rather than just lugging around the power to transform into useless things, Epic Yarn does transformations with style. It doesn't hold on to its transformations and uses them in many stages back to back, keeping them fresh in the player's mind so they don't just jump out of nowhere and go like, oh man, I forgot I did that in this game. But at the same time, Epic Yarn doesn't over-embellish you in transformations either. It plays its cards well by having a variety of different kinds of transformations, and each one of Kirby's many new forms have vastly varying playstyles, from racing segments, shoot-em-ups, hovering segments, vertical puzzle solving, and the transformational segments are all really well thought out too. Unlike Next Chapter, each area that involves a transformation takes full advantage of the new form's special powers. It actually plays and feels like, you know, a video game. And the detail each transformation has just shows how much care was put into them. Each one plays differently than the last, even ones that have similar functions are totally distinct from one another. chapter. The race car and snowboarder, for example, both have styles revolving around moving fast down slopes and timing jumps with speed and the use of power-ups, but the snowboarder focuses on time jumps and enemies and vertical motion, while the race car is mainly built on speed, crashing through obstacles, enemies, and using momentum to sprint forward fast enough to fly through strings of beads to get prizes and reach the finish line before the other competitors. And mid-stage transformations aren't the only ones in Epic Yarn either. Whole levels are done while transformed, levels which are built specifically from the ground up to support the transformation's powers, with challenges specifically suited for the transformation of said level. Levels focusing on the rocket, the fire truck, and yes, even the train, are all specially made to make the most of every power, making the transformations fit perfectly into the world, always being in your mind as you play and always being an exciting thrill when you see the power patch as you know the quality and the craftsmanship of the powers that they bring. Worth mentioning too is that every one of Kirby's transformations in Epic Yarn has at least one stage dedicated to it, with some having even more than that. If you ever wonder what transformations should be like in games, look no further than Kirby's Epic Yarn. Well, that's a first. Number 3. Fundamentals. So the book is closed, right? Kirby's Epic Yarn is far superior transformations than Drawn to Life the next chapter, right? And the reason being, Epic Yarn's transformations were just made with more care and thought, wasn't it? Well, that's only about half the answer, but I think we can dig just a tiny bit deeper. What do you say, you with me? Something about Kirby's Epic Yarn's transformations is that they play things pretty safe. The game is made for kids, and while each power plays distinctly from one another, they also play pretty simply, kinda like arcade machines. Move and shoot, move and jump, move and shoot but slightly different, train. But while simple, these fundamentals act as a sort of basic structure to build gameplay off of. This differs heavily from next chapter. When you really think about it, what could be expected from such basic and boring powers? A spider and a blob. Yeah, it doesn't really give you a whole lot to work with. The spider form does nothing but walk on walls and maybe spin a web. The blob form does nothing but squeeze through walls, a power so basic that Kirby even does it in his basic form in Epic Yarn. From the very beginning, the basic concept of next chapter's transformations are dead on arrival. While this video began by discussing the proper and improper use of transformational mechanics in games, it's also mainly about what happens when you let half-baked ideas spoil your games. Doing things just for the heck of them is one of the worst reasons to do it, and it just brings the rest of the game, story, or whatever you're doing down so much further. And more than that, it becomes distracting and even draining to have to compensate for things that have no reason to be there in the first place. Whenever a game sells itself in a mechanic that it clearly doesn't care about, it's just a great big sign of lack of thought and lack of caring. I guess what I'm saying is that when you're making a game, you should really consider all the aspects of what you're doing and not do the things that don't have any reason to be done. Because even in the best case scenario, where a game ends up being good despite many of its poor ideas, well, you still had a whole bunch of poor ideas that didn't really contribute at all to making the game good, and in fact brought it down from potentially great to, at best, just good or okay. You shouldn't be satisfied with anything less than passable, and that being said, I think most people should strive for well above average, whether you're making games or playing them, because nobody wants to play bad games. Except maybe this guy.
No, I don't think I want to do that.
Look, I'm getting off topic now, so if you take nothing away from this video, at least take this. Don't try to overcompensate by stuffing your games with distractions, especially not when all the effort you could put into making those distractions could just go into fixing the core problems of your game or story or whatever it is that you're making. Specifically talking about games, I'm just so tired of playing ones that are stuffed themselves to the brim with nonsense instead of getting back to the basics and just providing quality experiences. Bigger is not better. There's no need to inflate things until they burst, especially if all you're doing is stuffing it with empty air. And you shouldn't feel like you have to accept the stuff either, because, ooh, there's more stuff now, so I can't complain. Because if you're bored out of your mind pressing buttons to make people you don't care about do tasks or perform actions you're not interested in, then is that really more content? So take this to heart, my friends. Don't be swindled by cheap theatrics when there are so much better things you can give your time and attention to. That and Drawn to Life the next chapter sucks. I mean, look at this map design. My god, did they even try? Compare that to Epic Yarn, it's like, holy wow, look at that. Color, life, excitement. Look back at next chapter and it's like, ooh wow, a boring cave, a factory, a space jungle. Yet every level in the space jungle looks the same. How do you make space boring? And what is with that evil duck monster? It's horrifying. Guess Epic Yarn's got some spooky dudes too, like this guy. Oh geez, get that thing away from me. I mean, they both have lava levels, but Epic Yarn's levels are so much more moving and grooving. Next chapters are just boring. And by the way, have you noticed minecarts keep showing up in my videos? Look, there's one now. Why do they keep showing up? I don't even like minecarts. Oh yeah, there's another thing I forgot to mention. Why cart segments at all? What's the point? Whole levels where you can just ride on a cart like big. What's the point? Hey, you watched my video. Thanks. If you liked it, why not check out another one I've done? Tell me what you thought in the comments if you feel like it, and I hope you have a good day, night, morning, evening, afternoon, dawn, dusk. See you around.